The flight from Seattle landed 20 minutes early. I should have called Victoria. That's what a normal husband does. Sends the "landed safely" text, confirms pickup time, asks what's for dinner. But I wanted to see her face light up when I walked through the door. 3 days away felt like 3 weeks, and the Mercer trial ending early felt like fate handing me a gift. I was wrong about the gift. Fate wasn't being kind. Fate was finally being honest. My name is Nathan Cole. I'm 38 years old, and I've spent the last 12 years as a criminal defense attorney in Denver. I've seen the worst of human nature documented in evidence photos, heard confessions that would make a priest question his faith, and defended people whose guilt was written across their faces like headlines. I thought I understood deception. I understood nothing. The cab dropped me at 2:20 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. I remember the exact time because I checked my watch as I paid the driver. Victoria's Audi wasn't in the driveway, which made sense. She worked as a marketing manager at Vertex Technologies, and she rarely left before 6. The house looked the same as it always did. Red brick colonial, white shutters, the hydrangeas she planted 3 years ago finally filling out nicely along the front walk. I let myself in through the garage, rolling my suitcase across the concrete floor and into the mudroom. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the living room, a wedding gift from her parents. That's when I smelled it. Cologne. Not mine. Something woodsy with a hint of citrus, the kind of scent that costs too much and tries too hard. It hung in the air like a ghost, concentrated near the stairs leading to the master bedroom. 12 years of criminal defense work has trained me to notice things. Details that don't belong. Evidence that contradicts the narrative. My brain started cataloging before my heart had time to catch up. I walked through my own home like a crime scene investigator. The master bedroom closet yielded the first piece of evidence. A men's leather jacket, brown, expensive, size large. I wear black, and I prefer wool. In the bathroom, a second electric toothbrush sat in the holder, blue when mine was black. Under the sink, a razor that wasn't mine, shaving cream I'd never purchased, deodorant in a scent I didn't use. On my nightstand, the one I'd slept beside for 6 years of marriage, a phone charger was plugged into the outlet. Wrong brand, wrong connector. Someone had been sleeping in my bed. Someone had been living in my house. I stood in the doorway of my own bedroom, suitcase still in hand, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not rage. Not grief. Something colder. Something that recognized this moment for what it was. The opening statement of a case I never wanted to try. I pulled out my phone and photographed everything. Every item, every detail, every piece of evidence that told me my wife had been sharing our home with another man. I was careful not to touch anything, not to disturb the scene. Old habits. Then I checked the security system. We'd installed it 2 years ago after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood. The app on my phone logged every arm, disarm, and alert. Yesterday, according to the records, the system was disabled at 9 a.m. and re-enabled at 6:15 p.m., just before I usually called Victoria during my evening break. Someone knew my schedule. Someone had planned this. I replaced everything exactly as I found it. The jacket went back on its hanger. The toothbrush returned to its spot. I even made sure the phone charger cord draped at the same angle. Then I booked a room at the Marriott downtown and drove away from the house I'd called home for 6 years. My hands were steady on the wheel. My mind was already 3 moves ahead. I made one phone call that night. "Derek, it's Nathan Cole. I need your help." Derek Simmons had spent 20 years with the FBI before retiring to open his own private investigation firm. We'd crossed paths on a case 4 years ago. I was defending a client accused of embezzlement, and Derek was the forensic accountant who'd built the prosecution's case. He was thorough, patient, and absolutely without sentiment. Exactly what I needed. "Nathan, it's been a while." His voice was gravelly, cautious. What kind of help? Surveillance equipment. Professional grade. I need it tonight. A long pause. Derek was a smart man. He didn't ask unnecessary questions. Come to my office at 8. And Nathan? Whatever this is, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry yet, I said. I don't have the full picture. In my experience, when a man calls asking for surveillance equipment and his voice sounds like yours does right now, the picture's pretty clear. He wasn't wrong. Derek's office was in a nondescript building near the rail yard, the kind of place you'd walk past 1,000 times without noticing. He buzzed me in and met me at the elevator. His gray hair mussed like he'd run his hands through it one too many times. You look terrible, he said by way of greeting. Thanks. You should see the other guy. That's what I'm afraid of. We walked through his office. Cluttered desks, whiteboards covered in case notes, the detritus of a career spent uncovering secrets. He led me to a back room lined with equipment I didn't recognize, pulling items from shelves and laying them on a workbench. 4 cameras, he said, demonstrating how to set each one up. Motion-activated, cloud storage, encrypted feed. Battery life is about 72 hours, but you can hardwire them if you have access to power. This one looks like a smoke detector. This one fits inside most standard bookshelf speakers. These 2 are smaller. Plant pots, toolboxes, anywhere with some depth. I nodded, cataloging each device. GPS tracker for the car, he continued, sliding a small black box across the table. Magnetic mount, goes under the chassis, updates every 30 seconds. You can track it from your phone. How much do I owe you? Derek waved his hand. Consider it professional courtesy. You got my nephew off that DUI charge last year. We're even. He paused, studying my face. Nathan, I've been doing this for 30 years. You want to tell me what's happening? I came home early from Seattle, found things that shouldn't have been there. Things like? A second toothbrush, men's cologne, a phone charger that wasn't mine. Derek's expression didn't change, but I saw something shift behind his eyes. You have any idea who? Not yet. That's why I need the cameras. He nodded slowly. You know, most men in your situation, they'd blow up. Confront the wife, throw things, end up doing something stupid that kills their case before it starts. I'm not most men. No. Derek packed the equipment into a duffel bag and handed it to me. No, you're not. That's what worries me. Worries you? Because men who don't blow up, men who go cold and calculating, those are the ones who end up in situations that can't be walked back from. You understand what I'm saying? I did. He was warning me not to do something I'd regret. I'm a lawyer, Derek. I know how to build a case without catching a charge. Yeah. He walked me to the elevator. Just remember, evidence collection isn't the same as evidence creation. Whatever you find, don't touch anything you don't have to. Don't move anything. Don't remove anything. You're building a record, not staging a crime scene. Understood. And Nathan? He put a hand on my shoulder. When you find out who it is, and you will, call me before you do anything else. I mean it. Promise me. I promised. I meant it at the time. I just didn't know how hard that promise would be to keep. The next morning, I told Victoria I had additional witness preparation in Seattle. The Mercer case required more work than expected. She believed me because she had no reason not to. Or maybe she believed me because it was convenient. 6 years of marriage, and I was starting to realize I didn't know which explanations were true and which were simply what I wanted to believe. I'll miss you, she said over the phone, and her voice sounded so genuine that I almost doubted myself. Almost. I installed the cameras that afternoon while she was at work. 4 units, motion-activated, cloud-connected. 1 in the living room hidden inside a bookshelf speaker, 1 in the master bedroom concealed in the smoke detector, 1 in the kitchen tucked inside a potted fern, and 1 in the garage mounted inside my toolbox. I also placed a GPS tracker on the undercarriage of her Audi, positioned where it wouldn't be spotted during routine maintenance. Then I drove to Seattle and checked into a hotel room I had no intention of leaving. My laptop sat open on the desk, connected to all 4 camera feeds, and I waited. I didn't have to wait long. Friday morning, 8:15 a.m. Victoria's Audi backed out of the driveway. She was dressed for work, hair perfect, smile in place. I watched her drive away on the garage camera, and then I watched the empty house for 32 minutes. At 8:47 a.m., a black Ford F-150 pulled into my driveway. A man stepped out. Late 30s, athletic build, dark hair with hints of gray at the temples. He walked to my front door, pulled keys from his pocket, his own keys, and let himself into my home. He walked in like he owned the place. I sat in that Seattle hotel room and watched a stranger take over my life. He showered in my bathroom, the steam fogging the camera lens. He toweled off with my towels, the ones Victoria bought from that expensive home store in Cherry Creek. He walked into my closet, naked, casual, comfortable, and selected clothes from my hangers. We were similar in size, apparently. He dressed in my shirt, my pants, my belt. Then he went downstairs and made breakfast. I watched him crack eggs into a pan, the all-clad Pan Victoria, and I received as a wedding gift from her aunt. I watched him pour orange juice into a glass from the set we bought together at Crate and Barrel, our first year of marriage. I watched him sit at my kitchen table, in my chair, eating breakfast like this was just another ordinary morning. The cold thing in my chest grew colder. At 10 a.m., he moved to my home office. He opened a laptop I didn't recognize and started working. Occasionally, he'd get up, stretch, help himself to snacks from my pantry, coffee from my coffee maker. He answered phone calls in a voice too muffled for the camera to capture clearly. He was living my life, and he was better at it than I was. I didn't eat. I barely blinked. I just watched. At 5:30 p.m., he started cooking dinner. Something elaborate. I could see multiple pots on the stove, ingredients spread across the counter. He moved around my kitchen with the familiarity of someone who'd done it hundreds of times. And maybe he had. Maybe this had been going on for months, years. Maybe I'd never known my own life at all. At 6:15, Victoria's Audi pulled into the garage. I watched her walk through the mudroom door, drop her purse on the counter, slip off her heels. She looked tired in that way people look tired after a long day of pretending. I recognized the expression because I'd seen it in the mirror during difficult trials. Then she saw him, and her face transformed. She walked straight into his arms. They embraced like a married couple, not the desperate clutching of new lovers, but the comfortable fit of people who'd held each other 1,000 times before. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, and she leaned into him like he was home. I watched my wife come home to another man in my house, and I felt something inside me die. Not break. Die. A small, quiet death that wouldn't make a sound, wouldn't leave a mark, but would change everything about who I was. I closed the laptop. I walked to the hotel window and stared out at the Seattle skyline. All those glittering lights, all those people living their ordinary lives with no idea what it felt like to watch your world unmake itself on a laptop screen. Then I opened the laptop again because I had to know everything, every detail, every moment, every piece of evidence that would help me understand how my marriage had become a lie. Saturday was worse. I watched them sleep in my bed. I watched them have breakfast together on my patio. And then, at 7 p.m., I watched them host a dinner party. 2 couples arrived, people I'd never seen before in my life. They brought wine and dessert, hugged Victoria warmly, and shook the stranger's hand like old friends. Through the kitchen camera's audio feed, I heard Victoria introduce him. "This is my husband, Nathan." The man smiled and played along perfectly. "We've heard so much about you," one of the women said, and he laughed and said something charming that I couldn't quite make out. My wife was living an entire second life. She had friends I didn't know, a husband I'd never met, and a reality that existed completely parallel to our marriage. She wasn't just cheating. She was rehearsing for a future that didn't include me. Late that night, after the guests left and Victoria went to sleep, the man retrieved a duffel bag from his truck. I watched him carry it into the guest room, a room I rarely entered, and unzip it on the bed. Inside, a handgun, ammunition, and a stack of documents I couldn't read from the camera angle. He stored the bag in the guest room closet and closed the door. I screen captured everything. Then I poured myself a drink from the hotel minibar, sat in the dark, and started planning. "His name is Tyler Brennan," Derek said 5 days later, sliding a manila folder across his desk. "And Nathan, you need to sit down for this." I was already sitting, but I understood what he meant. The folder was thick. Too thick for a simple affair. Tyler James Whitfield is his birth name. He changed it legally after his last prison release in 2019. Before that, 2 counts of fraud in Nevada, 1 count of identity theft in Arizona. Served 14 months total. No registered employment since release, but he lists himself as a financial consultant on social media. No license, no office, no clients. He's a con man. Worse, he's a professional predator. Derek pulled out a separate document. 3 previous marriages. All 3 ended in divorce. All 3 ex-wives filed for bankruptcy within 2 years of leaving him. I stared at the photograph clipped to the folder, the same face I'd watched make breakfast in my kitchen, kiss my wife hello, sleep in my bed. Tyler Brennan, the man who'd taken over my life. "There's more," Derek said, and his voice carried a weight that made my stomach tighten. His second wife, Melissa Whitfield. She died 4 years ago. Official cause: accidental overdose. But here's the thing. She had a life insurance policy worth $750,000. Beneficiary was Tyler. The case was investigated, but never prosecuted. Insufficient evidence. I sat back in my chair. "You're telling me this man might be a murderer?" "I'm telling you this man has a dead ex-wife and a suspicious payout. Draw your own conclusions." Derek leaned forward. "Nathan, this isn't just an affair. Victoria didn't find some random guy at a bar. She's involved with someone who destroys people for a living." The cold thing in my chest had a name now. Survival instinct. Because I understood finally what this was. Not just betrayal. Not just infidelity. This was a setup. And I was the mark. The next week confirmed everything. I requested records from my insurance company and discovered that 6 months ago, my life insurance policy had been increased from $500,000 to $2.5 million. The beneficiary change form was signed with my name, except the signature wasn't mine. Victoria worked in marketing. She had access to every digital design tool imaginable. She had forged my signature on a document worth millions. I reviewed the surveillance footage more carefully and noticed Tyler photographing documents in my home office. Bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds. In one video, I could see him writing something in a notebook. Derek enhanced the image. My social security number, copied down in neat handwriting. Then there was the gun. Derek traced the Glock's serial number through law enforcement contacts. The weapon was registered to Nathan Cole, to me. Purchased 8 months ago in a private sale. I'd never bought a firearm in my life, never applied for any permit, never set foot in a gun store. Someone had used my identity to acquire a weapon that was now hidden in my guest room closet. I sat in Derek's office and laid out the pieces. They increased my life insurance and forged my signature on the paperwork. They've been photographing my financial documents. They bought a gun in my name and hid it in my house. Tyler has a dead ex-wife and an insurance payout. I looked at Derek. "They're going to kill me." Derek nodded slowly. "That's my read, too. The gun is the key. If I die and that gun is used, it looks like suicide. If I die some other way, the gun can be planted to make me look like the threat." self-defense claim. Either way, they walk away clean. So what do you want to do? I thought about Victoria, about the woman I'd married, shared a bed with, built a life with. I thought about the way she said, "I'll miss you," on the phone, and sounded like she meant it. I thought about 6 years of memories that now felt like a carefully constructed lie. I want to take everything they have, I said, and then I want to watch them lose everything they thought they'd gain. I called my law school classmate Amanda Foster, who'd built one of Denver's most successful divorce practices. Victoria and I signed a prenup before we got married, I told her. Her idea, actually. She said she wanted me to trust her completely. Amanda reviewed the document. There's an infidelity clause. Cheating by either party results in complete forfeiture of marital assets. If you can prove she's been unfaithful, I have over 200 hours of video surveillance showing her with another man in our home. I have him using our bed, our shower, our kitchen. I have dinner parties where she introduces him as her husband. Amanda sat back in her chair. Nathan, this is the most comprehensive infidelity case I've ever seen. She won't get a penny. I'm not just worried about the divorce. I explained everything. Tyler's criminal history, the dead ex-wife, the forged life insurance documents, the gun registered in my name. Amanda's face grew progressively more serious. You need to talk to law enforcement. This is attempted murder in the planning stages. I know, but I want it airtight. I want them to walk into their own trap. I flew home for a weekend visit and spent 2 days playing the role of devoted husband. Victoria seemed relaxed, happy even. She cooked my favorite meal. She talked about her work, about weekend plans, about a vacation she wanted to take in the spring. I've been thinking about Costa Rica, she said over dinner. You've been working so hard. We deserve a trip. I nodded and smiled and felt nothing. Late Saturday morning, while Victoria showered, I slipped into the guest room. The duffel bag was exactly where the camera footage showed it, tucked in the back corner of the closet, behind old boxes of winter clothes. I opened it carefully, wearing gloves, and photographed everything. The Glock, the ammunition, the documents inside. Then I carried the bag to my car and drove to a forensic specialist Derek recommended. The expert documented the weapon without disturbing fingerprints. He created a chain of custody report that would hold up in any courtroom. Then I drove back home and returned the gun to exactly where I'd found it. Victoria never noticed I'd been gone. Before I left Sunday afternoon, I noticed something new. Victoria was wearing a tennis bracelet, diamonds, delicate, expensive. I complimented it casually. Oh, this? She touched her wrist, smiled. I bought it on sale months ago. Treat yourself, right? I checked our credit cards and bank accounts that night. No such purchase. Derek traced the bracelet to a custom jeweler in downtown Denver. Purchased 3 weeks ago, cash payment, by Tyler Brennan. He was buying my wife gifts with money he'd conned from other women. Tyler's ex-wives were easier to find than I expected. All 3 agreed to speak with me, and their stories were devastatingly similar. Janet lived in a small apartment in Phoenix now, a far cry from the suburban home she'd shared with Tyler during their marriage. She was in her mid-40s, with the kind of wary eyes that came from learning lessons too late. Mr. Cole, when I heard what you were investigating, I drove 3 hours to meet you in person. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like it was the only warm thing in the world. Because I wish to God someone had warned me. Tell me everything, from the beginning. We met at a conference, professional development thing for my company. He was charming, you know? Not in an obvious way, not like a car salesman. He was interested. In me, in my work, in my thoughts. Do you know how rare that is? A man who actually listens? I nodded. I'd been that man once, or thought I had. Within 3 months, he'd moved in. Within 6 months, we were married. My friends thought I was crazy. My parents were worried. But Tyler had explanations for everything. He was between jobs, getting back on his feet. He had investments that were about to pay off. He just needed a little help getting started. Help meaning money. Help meaning my credit cards, my savings account. Eventually, loans in my name for business ventures that never materialized. Her voice hardened. By the end, I was $300,000 in debt. My credit was destroyed, and Tyler was already lining up his next target. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world, Mr. Cole. And then he made me feel like I was nothing. Danielle's story was similar. Wife number 3 divorced 2 years ago, still paying off the debts Tyler had accumulated in her name. I thought we were building something together, she said, over video call, her face tired on the screen. He had all these plans, businesses, real estate, franchises. All I had to do was co-sign a few documents. He said we were partners. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. When he left, I didn't even have a car. He'd sold it to cover unexpected expenses. I had to move back in with my mother at 42 years old. Did you report any of this to the police? I tried. They said it was a civil matter, a bad marriage, consenting adults making poor financial decisions. Nobody wanted to hear that I'd been conned. They just thought I was stupid. The second wife was dead, but her sister Patricia agreed to speak with me. Melissa was always trusting people, always seeing the good in them. Patricia's voice cracked on her sister's name. When she met Tyler, she thought he was her soulmate. She'd had some bad relationships before, some real disasters, and Tyler seemed different. He seemed kind. What happened? Same thing that happened to the others. The financial manipulation, the isolation from family. But Melissa fought back harder. She started asking questions, demanding to see where the money was going. They had terrible fights near the end. She told me she was thinking about divorce. And then? And then she died. Patricia's face hardened. They called it an accidental overdose, prescription medication mixed with alcohol. But here's the thing. Melissa didn't drink, hadn't touched alcohol in 5 years. And those prescriptions? They were Tyler's. He'd been complaining about back pain, got pills from 3 different doctors. The night she died, he was supposedly at a conference in Las Vegas. Supposedly? I never believed it. I talked to the detectives, showed them the life insurance policy, pointed out all the inconsistencies. They investigated for 3 months and then closed the case. Insufficient evidence. She leaned toward the camera. Mr. Cole, I've spent 4 years knowing that man killed my sister and got away with it. Please tell me you're going to make him pay. I'm going to do everything I can. Combined debt from the 3 surviving ex-wives, $890,000. 3 women's lives destroyed. 1 woman dead. And my wife was next in line, except she thought she was the partner, not the victim. I called Victoria from my office in Los Angeles and planted the seed. I've been feeling run down lately, headaches, fatigue, probably just stress from the case. I paused. If anything ever happened to me, at least you'd be taken care of. The insurance would make sure of that. That night, I watched them on the bedroom camera. Victoria came upstairs around 9, wearing the silk robe I'd bought her for Christmas. Tyler was already in bed, my bed, reading something on his phone. She climbed in beside him and curled against his chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. Nathan called today, she said. I watched Tyler's body stiffen almost imperceptibly. Yeah? Everything okay? He sounded off, said he's not feeling well. Headaches, tiredness. He mentioned seeing a doctor when he gets back. Tyler set his phone down. In the grainy camera footage, I could see his mind working, calculating, adjusting his plans like a chess player who'd just seen an unexpected opening. That could actually work for us, he said slowly. What do you mean? I mean, if he's already talking about feeling unwell and then something happens, He let the sentence hang in the air. Doctors would look at the symptoms. They'd assume it was related. Nobody would suspect anything. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Through the camera, I watched her trace patterns on his chest with her fingertip, her expression unreadable. "We've been talking about this for months, Vic. The waiting period on the new policy is over. Everything's in place. I'm just saying, this might be a sign. A sign that it's time to stop talking and start doing." Another long pause. I held my breath in my hotel room, watching my wife decide whether to kill me. "How would we even do it?" she finally asked. "I mean, practically. He's healthy, he's careful. He doesn't even drink that much. I know someone, a guy I worked with on a thing in Vegas a few years back. He can get us something pharmaceutical, completely untraceable. Looks like a heart attack, a sudden cardiac event in a man under 40, especially one who's been complaining about feeling unwell. Doctors see it all the time. And what exactly would this something involve? A pill. You dissolve it in his drink, coffee, bourbon, doesn't matter. Takes about 6 hours to work. He goes to sleep, and he doesn't wake up. No pain, no struggle, just done." I watched Victoria sit up slightly, pulling the robe tighter around herself. Her face in the camera feed looked thoughtful, like she was considering which restaurant to choose for dinner. What if they investigate? What if they find something? They won't. This stuff metabolizes completely. Coroner would have to specifically test for it, and they'd have no reason to. Heart attack and a stressed-out lawyer? Tragic, but not suspicious. And the life insurance? Pays out in full. $2.5 million. We wait 6 months, maybe a year, then we disappear. New names, new country, new life. Victoria was quiet again. I could see her processing, weighing risks against rewards, measuring the life I'd given her against the life Tyler was promising. "Do it," she said. 2 words. Just 2 words, spoken in the same voice she used to tell me she loved me. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Get whatever you need from your guy." "But Tyler..." She turned to face him, and even through the camera's limited resolution I could see something hard in her eyes. "If this goes wrong, if anything traces back to us, I will burn you to the ground. You understand me?" He smiled. "That's my girl. I had my wife on tape ordering my murder. I saved the footage to 3 different cloud servers, made backup copies on encrypted drives, and sat in the dark of my hotel room until dawn, replaying those 2 words over and over again. Do it. The woman I'd loved for 6 years wanted me dead, and now I had proof." The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after I first walked into my own home and smelled another man's cologne. I was in Ryan Mitchell's office at 5:45 a.m. when the tactical team assembled. Through the window, I could see the first hints of dawn creeping over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Beautiful morning for a reckoning. "You don't have to be here for this," Ryan said, handing me a cup of coffee. "Actually, I'd recommend you weren't. If something goes sideways, I'm staying." He nodded. He understood. Some things you need to see for yourself. The radio crackled at 6:02 a.m. "All units in position. Visual confirms 2 subjects inside the residence, preparing to breach." I closed my eyes and pictured the layout of my home, the master bedroom at the top of the stairs, the guest room at the end of the hall, the kitchen where Tyler made breakfast every morning while wearing my clothes. Executing breach in 3, 2, 1. Through the radio, I heard the splintering of my front door, the thunderous shout of, "Police! Down on the ground!" Then chaos, running footsteps, shouting voices, the crash of something breaking. I imagined Victoria jolting awake, seeing armed officers flooding into the bedroom, Tyler scrambling for an escape route that didn't exist. "Male subject is running, rear of the property. Units 2 and 3, intercept." More shouting. A brief scuffle. Then, male subject in custody, one officer down, minor injury, suspect resisted. Female subject? In custody. She's asking for a lawyer. Ryan looked at me. It's done. They got them both. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt hollow, like someone had carved out my insides and left only the shell. At 9 a.m., Victoria was arrested at Vertex Technologies. I wasn't there for that one either, but Ryan described it later. How the detectives walked into the building, asked to see her, and found her in a glass-walled conference room presenting to clients. How she saw them coming and her face went white. How she tried to stand and nearly fell. How the handcuffs clicked around her wrists while her colleagues watched in stunned silence. She asked about you, Ryan said. Wanted to know if you were okay. Asked if maybe there had been some mistake. What did they tell her? That you were the one who built the case against her. That you'd been watching for 6 weeks. I imagined her face when she heard that. The moment she understood that she wasn't the hunter. She was the prey. That every time she'd kissed Tyler in our bedroom, every conversation about my death, every plan they'd made together, I'd been watching. Good, I said, and I meant it. Victoria's defense was predictable. She claimed Tyler manipulated her. She was a victim, she said. She never would have actually gone through with it. But the recordings told a different story. Her voice, clear and calm, saying, "Do it." Her participation in the planning, the discussions about timing, the research she'd done on undetectable poisons. She wasn't a victim. She was a volunteer. Tyler tried a different approach. He offered to testify against Victoria in exchange for leniency, claimed she'd approached him with the murder plan, painted himself as a pawn in her scheme. The prosecutor wasn't buying it. We have his criminal history, his pattern of behavior, 3 destroyed ex-wives, and a suspicious death, Ryan told me. This isn't his first time. He's just never been caught before. I sat in the observation room during Tyler's interrogation, watching through the one-way glass. He'd cleaned up since the arrest. Someone had given him a decent shirt, combed his hair. He looked almost respectable, the kind of man you might trust with your finances or your wife. Detective Martinez led the questioning. She was small, sharp-eyed, patient as a cat watching a mouse hole. Let's go through this one more time, Tyler. You're saying Victoria Cole approached you with a plan to murder her husband? That's right. She found me online. Said she was stuck in a bad marriage, needed a way out. I felt sorry for her. You felt sorry for her. She was desperate. I made some bad choices, I admit that. But I never wanted anyone to get hurt. Martinez shuffled her papers. Interesting. Because we have records showing you contacted Victoria first, through a website called Discreet Connections, 2 years ago. Tyler's composure flickered. Just for a moment. I may have reached out initially, but she's the one who... And we have 3 other women you contacted through the same site, in the Denver area, same time frame, same pattern of communication. Now he was sweating. I could see it from behind the glass, the shine on his forehead, the way his hands gripped the table edge. That's not what it looks like. Isn't it? Because to me, it looks like you run a pattern. Find married women, seduce them, move into their lives. And when you're done extracting value, when the credit cards are maxed out and the loans are in their names, you move on to the next one. I want a lawyer. You have that right. But Tyler, before you lawyer up, let me tell you what we have. Martinez leaned forward. We have 200 hours of video surveillance. We have audio of you discussing the murder with Victoria Cole. We have the forged insurance documents, the gun registered in Mr. Cole's name, with your fingerprints on it, by the way. And we have 3 ex-wives who are very eager to testify about your business practices. Tyler was quiet. But here's the really interesting part. Martinez pulled out a photograph. Melissa Whitfield, Your second wife died 4 years ago. You remember Melissa, don't you? Something changed in Tyler's face. The charming mask slipped, and underneath was something older, darker, more calculating. That was ruled an accident. It was, but we've reopened the case. New evidence has come to light. The medications found in her system, your prescriptions, Tyler, filled at 3 different pharmacies, and your alibi for that night, the conference in Las Vegas, we pulled hotel records. You checked out 6 hours before you claimed. I want a lawyer, right now. Martinez stood. Get him a lawyer. He's going to need one. During his second interrogation, with his attorney present, something broke in Tyler Brennan. Maybe it was the weight of evidence. Maybe it was the realization that the walls were closing in from every direction. Maybe it was just exhaustion after years of running. Whatever the reason, he started talking. I did it, he said, his voice flat. Melissa, I did it. His lawyer tried to stop him, but Tyler waved her off. What's the point? They've got everything else. Might as well give them this too. He described it in detail, the specific medications he'd used, how he'd crushed them into her evening tea, how he'd waited until she fell asleep and then arranged the scene to look like an accidental overdose, how he'd driven to the Las Vegas conference the next morning, established his alibi, and played the grieving widower when the police called. She was going to leave me, he said. She'd figured out what I was doing with the money. She was going to go to the police. I couldn't let that happen. Patricia Whitfield watched the recording later. I was told she cried for the first time since her sister's funeral. They added first-degree murder charges to Tyler's case. He was transferred to Nevada to face prosecution there first, where the death penalty was still on the table. He pleaded guilty to avoid lethal injection. Sentence: life without the possibility of parole. Tyler Brennan would never see the outside of a prison wall again. The divorce was almost anticlimactic. With Victoria facing criminal charges, the prenuptial agreement was enforced without contest. She forfeited all claims to marital assets. I kept the house, the investments, the retirement accounts, both vehicles. Victoria received nothing. I sold the house 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized. I couldn't walk into the bedroom without seeing the camera footage in my mind, without imagining what had happened in that room while I was traveling for work, believing my marriage was solid. The new owners were a young couple with a baby on the way. They seemed happy. I wished them luck. Victoria's plea deal came through in month 4. 8 to 12 years for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and insurance fraud. Her attorney advised her to take it. The evidence was overwhelming. My recordings, the financial documents, the forged signature on the insurance forms. She'd built her own prison, brick by brick, and now she'd live in it. At her sentencing, Victoria cried. She talked about being in love, about making terrible choices, about the person she used to be before Tyler changed her. The judge wasn't moved. You plotted to murder a man who trusted you completely. You forged documents to profit from his death. You invited a known predator into your shared home and helped him plan your husband's killing. There is no excuse, no justification, no redemption that this court can offer. You made your choices freely and deliberately. 10 years in state prison. No possibility of parole for 7 years. I watched her led away in handcuffs and felt something I didn't expect. Nothing. Not satisfaction, not grief, not even relief. Just emptiness where love used to be. There was one more piece of evidence I discovered during the proceedings. Victoria had kept a second phone, hidden in her office desk. The police found it during their investigation and turned it over as part of discovery. On that phone, she'd installed a journal app with entries dating back 18 months. The entries detailed her plans for life after my death. She'd picked out the house she wanted to buy, a modern place in Cherry Creek, all glass and clean lines. She'd listed vacation destinations, Bali, the Maldives, Portugal. She drafted social media posts about her tragic loss, carefully worded to generate sympathy and establish her as a grieving widow. One entry, dated 3 months before my discovery, read, "Everything is in place. T says the waiting period on the new policy ends next month. Then we can finally start our real life together. I've been patient long enough." N has no idea. He thinks everything is perfect. That's what makes this so easy. She'd been planning my murder while telling me she loved me. She'd been drafting my obituary while kissing me goodbye at the airport. I showed the journal entries to my therapist during our weekly session. "How does it make you feel?" Dr. Warren asked. "Like I was married to a stranger. Like everything I thought I knew was a performance." I paused. "Like I'm lucky to be alive." "You are lucky," she said. "But luck isn't the only reason you're here. You trusted your instincts. You investigated instead of confronted. You built a case instead of reacting emotionally. That takes discipline, Nathan. That takes strength." I didn't feel strong. I felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped out my center and left only the shell. But I was breathing. I was free. And Victoria was watching her plans crumble from behind bars. Maybe that was enough. I visited Victoria once, 6 months into her sentence. I didn't want reconciliation. I didn't want closure. I wanted to understand. The prison visiting room was exactly what I expected. Plastic chairs, fluorescent lights, a guard watching from the corner. Victoria came out in an orange jumpsuit, her hair shorter than I remembered, her face older. 10 years of prison will age you before you even start serving them. She sat across from me, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. "Why?" I finally asked. "We had a good life. I loved you." Victoria smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You loved your version of me. The wife who cooked your favorite meals and asked about your cases and waited for you to come home. Tyler saw the real me. The real you was willing to kill for money. The real me was tired of being a supporting character in your life. Do you know what it's like to always be the spouse of somebody? Nathan Cole's wife. That's how people introduced me. That's how your colleagues saw me. I wanted my own story." "So your story involved murdering me?" She leaned forward. "You were never supposed to know. It was going to be gentle, peaceful. You would have gone to sleep and never woken up. No pain, no fear. And then I would have been free." I stared at the woman I'd married, tried to find any trace of the person I thought I knew. There was nothing there. Just a stranger wearing a familiar face. "You're going to spend the next decade in this place," I said, standing. "And when you get out, you'll have nothing. No money, no career, no future. Tyler's serving life without parole. The life you planned, the house in Cherry Creek, the trips to Bali, none of it will ever happen. I hope your own story was worth it." I walked out without looking back. I never saw her again. 1 year after Victoria's arrest, I received a letter. The return address was a town in Montana I'd never visited. The handwriting was shaky, careful, elderly. Inside was a single page, handwritten, and a photograph. "Dear Mr. Cole, my name is Margaret Whitfield. Melissa was my daughter. I read about your case in the newspaper. I read about what Tyler confessed to during his interrogation. For 4 years, I've known in my heart that Melissa didn't die by accident. For 4 years, no one believed me. Because of you, her killer will never hurt anyone else. Because of you, I finally have answers. I don't know how to thank you for that. There aren't words big enough. I want you to know who Melissa was. She taught kindergarten for 12 years. She loved children, loved watching them learn and grow. She believed in second chances. That's why she married Tyler. She thought she could help him become a better person. She was wrong, but her heart was in the right place. I'm enclosing her graduation photo. She was 22 in this picture, a week away from starting her first teaching job. She had her whole life ahead of her. Thank you for giving me my daughter back. Not the way I wanted, but at least now I know the truth. At least now there's justice. With gratitude. Margaret Whitfield. The photograph showed a young woman in a graduation cap and gown, dark hair, bright smile, the kind of face that radiated warmth. She looked hopeful. She looked like she believed the future would be kind. I framed the photo and put it on my desk. Not as a trophy. Not as a reminder of what I'd survived. As a reminder of what Tyler had taken. Not just from Margaret Whitfield, but from the world. A kindergarten teacher who believed in second chances. A daughter who deserved to grow old. My survival wasn't just about me. It was about stopping a monster before he could kill again. Rachel came into my life 8 months after the divorce was finalized. We met at a fundraiser for children's literacy. She was a pediatric nurse volunteering at the registration table, and I was a lawyer who'd been guilted into attending by a colleague. She had red hair and freckles and laughed at her own jokes before other people could decide if they were funny. Our first date was coffee. Our second was dinner. On our third date, I told her everything. We were sitting in a booth at an Italian place in Lodo, splitting a tiramisu, and she asked why I seemed hesitant to talk about my past. So I told her. The surveillance, the recordings, the murder plot, the trial. All of it. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's a lot," she finally said. "I know. And I understand if you want to—" "Nathan." She reached across the table and took my hand. "That happened to you. It doesn't define you. A person you trusted betrayed you in the worst possible way, and you survived. That's not a red flag. That's resilience." I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Most people would run. I'm not most people. She squeezed my hand. And for the record, if I ever meet Victoria, I'm going to have some words for her. Colorful words, possibly involving her ancestry and personal hygiene. I laughed. Actually laughed. The first real laugh I'd had in over a year. Life moved forward. I bought a condo downtown, small and efficient. No guest room, no extra closets. I installed a security system I controlled myself, and I never disabled it for anyone. My law practice grew. Word had spread about my case and clients sought me out. Men and women who'd been betrayed, who needed someone who understood what it felt like to have their trust weaponized against them. I didn't take every case, but the ones I took, I fought hard for. Derek Simmons and I still met for drinks every few months. We didn't talk much about Victoria or Tyler. We talked about cases, about his grandkids, about the Broncos. He'd become something like a friend, which was probably inevitable. When someone helps you survive a murder plot, you don't just send a thank you card. The ex-wives stayed in touch. Janet, Danielle, and I filed a civil lawsuit against Tyler. Not because we expected to recover anything, but because it mattered. He'd taken from all of us, and we wanted it on the record. I covered their legal fees without telling them. It was the least I could do. And somewhere in Montana, Margaret Whitfield had finally buried her daughter properly. Not the death, but the doubt. The wondering. The not knowing. She sent me a card at Christmas. "Thinking of you, with gratitude always." 2 years after I walked into my home and smelled cologne that wasn't mine, I was standing outside a Denver courthouse after a long day of depositions. The sun was setting, painting the buildings gold and orange, and I was checking my phone for messages. The opposing counsel in my current case approached, a young attorney, eager, ambitious. She'd been watching me all day with something like awe, which made me uncomfortable. "Mr. Cole, can I ask you something?" I nodded. "I read about what happened to you. The whole case is public record now. How do you do this work after all that? Divorce law, betrayal, trust. How do you wade through other people's worst moments when you've lived through your own? I thought about the question, about Victoria in her orange jumpsuit telling me Tyler saw the real her, about Tyler in an interrogation room, finally confessing to Melissa's murder, about Margaret Whitfield's letter, the photograph of a young woman who never got to grow old. Because I know what it feels like to be hunted, I said. And I know what it feels like to survive. I use that knowledge every single day. My clients come to me at the lowest point of their lives, and I can look them in the eye and tell them, it gets better. You can rebuild. The person who tried to destroy you doesn't get to win. I paused. That's worth something. The young attorney nodded slowly, processing. You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come home early that day? Every day. Every single day. The flight landed early, I said. Maybe that was luck. Maybe that was something else. I don't spend a lot of time wondering. What matters is what I did with the chance I was given. I shook her hand and walked toward the parking garage. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Dinner at 7? I typed back, I'll be home. For the first time in years, the word didn't feel like a lie.